Alright, so today we're going to look at some word problems, and I know sometimes the mention of word problems can get some people with their math anxiety setting in, but don't worry, we're going to do these in a step-by-step approach, okay? So, problem 1. The perimeter of a square is 40 feet. How long is the diagonal? The perimeter of a square is 40 feet. How long is the diagonal? Okay, so whenever you are solving a geometry word problem, sometimes when you're doing a geometry word problem, they give you a picture to go with it. But if they don't, your first step always is to draw what they're telling you. Okay? And so this says that there is a square. So we want to draw a square, but we want to draw a square like a geometry student, not an elementary school student. So what do I mean by that? If you were in elementary school and you drew this shape and brought it to your teacher and you were like, "Look, miss, I drew a square." For elementary school, that would be wonderful. You'd get a sticker on your paper and a smiley face. But for geometry, this is not a good square. Because in geometry, we want to provide the definition of a square. A square has 4 congruent sides. So we want to put those markers to show that those 4 sides are congruent. And squares have 4 right angles. So we want to give the 4 right angle markers to show that it is a square. So whenever you're in geometry and you draw a square, your square should look like that. 4 congruent sides, 4 right angles. Alright, part 2 is to label, right? So they're going to give you some other information or some numbers in your problem. So it says the perimeter is 40 feet. So what does a perimeter mean? Remember that perimeter goes around the outside of a shape. Always teach students to think that perimeter is like a fence. It goes all the way around the outside of the shape. You have to go all the way around and build your fence so that your cows don't get loose. Right? So the perimeter is 40 feet. That means if I do one side plus another side plus another side plus another side, it equals 40. Right? All the way around. But in a square, all my sides are exactly the same. So all of those S's are the same. So I could add them together and make 4S equals 40. And divide by 4 and S equals 10. And some of you might say, "Miss Clary, what if I can just think of that in my head? Like I just know those sides are all 10 because 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 is 40. Fine. You don't necessarily have to write an equation, but that's how you would do it. So then we're going to label. This is 10 feet. This is 10 feet. This is 10 feet. This is 10 feet. But now we are looking for the diagonal. So we need to come draw the diagonal. The diagonal goes from vertex to vertex like this. So this is my diagonal. And in a square, the diagonal does something special to the angles. So this was back when we studied our quadrilaterals and we had our green property sheet. It said that the diagonal would bisect the vertices. So in a square, the diagonal cuts these in half. So if this was 90 degrees and the diagonal came in here and cut it in half, this would be 45 and this would be 45. And over here, when this one gets cut in half, this would be 45 and this would be 45. Oh, now it's looking like something we did yesterday, right? And so now, I don't even really care about the whole square. I'm just going to look at this triangle. Do you see you have a 45, 45, 90 right triangle? And these are my two legs that are congruent. And this diagonal is my hypotenuse. And so based on what we learned yesterday, the hypotenuse, which is the diagonal, right? The diagonal equals the hypotenuse of the triangle. So that equals a leg, 10, times the square root of 2. And I can leave my answer in radical form, right? Unless my instructions tell me to change it into a decimal, I can just leave that as my answer. Alright, we're going to do one other one together. Alright, so our second example says the diagonal of Mr. Rios's square garden is 4 feet. How long is each side? So, again, step 1, draw a picture, and Mr. Rios has a square garden. So we're going to come draw a square like a geometry student draws a square with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. And then we're going to label. So our story says the diagonal of Mr. Rios's square garden is 4 feet. The diagonal is 4 feet. So I'm going to come make my diagonal and label that 4 feet. So remember, when I draw the diagonal, it cuts these into 45-degree angles. So here is my right triangle. I'm going to mark that with my highlighter. But this time I know the hypotenuse and I'm trying to get to the leg. So if you remember from yesterday, when you have the hypotenuse and you're going to the leg, you divide by the square root of 2. So this side, right, the sides here are the legs. Sides are the sides of the square are the legs of the triangle. And so a side is going to be equal to 4 divided by the square root of 2.